December 16th, 1944. The snow-dusted treetops of the Ardennes forest, Belgium. Dawn's grey light filters through the pines like a reluctant witness, casting long shadows over the makeshift command post, huddled in a bombed-out farmhouse. The air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and cordite, the distant rumble of artillery echoing like thunder trapped in the hills. Inside, the room is a chaos of flickering lantern light and crackling radios, where maps sprawl across a scarred wooden table like the veins of a dying beast. General Major Hasso von Manteuffel stands at the center, his iron cross glinting faintly under his greatcoat, eyes narrowed on the topographic chart of the Meuse River line. At 52, he's a veteran of the Eastern Front's meat grinders, his face etched with the lines of too many winters and too few victories. Around him, his staff officers murmur in low tones. Oberstleutnant Friedrich von der Heydte, the paratrooper commander with a bandage still fresh from Crete, pores over aerial reconnaissance photos, while Hauptmann Karl Weber, the signals officer, fiddles with the Enigma decoder's dials, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill. The radio spits to life, a voice cutting through the static like a knife. Eagle's Nest to Panther Command. Forward patrols report minimal Allied activity. Fogs thick as pea soup. Their sentries are half asleep. Von Manteuffel's lips curl into a thin smile. This is it, the spearhead of Operation Wacht am Rhein. Hitler's desperate gamble to split the Western Allies and recapture Antwerp's ports. His 5th Panzer Army, 20,000 men strong, with the mighty King Tiger tanks of the 2nd SS Panzer Division lurking in the woods, poised to punch through the thin American lines of the 106th Infantry Division. You can almost feel the ground trembling beneath your boots as the engines of the Panzer Fs idle just beyond the tree line, their diesel growl muffled by the falling snow. Von Manteuffel paces, gloved hands clasped behind his back, his mind racing through the Führer's orders. Speed, surprise, encirclement, no delays. The Ardennes is a ghost of 1940's blitzkrieg triumph, but now it's a frozen hell. Supplies rationed to the bone after Normandy's debacle. One wrong move, and the panzers become sitting ducks for the Shermans and Typhoons. Status on the 116th Panzer? Von Manteuffel barks, his voice a whip-crack in the dim room. Oberstleutnant Hans Schmidt, the division's liaison, snaps to attention, his face pale under the helmet crease. Ready, Herr Generalmajor? Fuel topped off from the last convoy, enough for 150 kilometers, but the roads, they're ice-slicked. The Fallschirmjäger drop zones are marked, but visibility's dropping. Von der Heydte nods grimly. His elite paratroopers, the 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, are tasked with seizing the key crossroads at Malmedy and St. Vith, sowing chaos behind enemy lines with their FG-42 rifles and potato masher grenades. The general leans over the map, tracing the arrow of advance with a stubby finger. The plan is elegant in its audacity. 3 armies, his own in the center, flanked by the 6th SS Panzer and 7th Armies, would surge 80 miles to the Meuse in days, trapping Montgomery's Brits and Patton's Yanks in a pocket. But doubts gnaw at the edges. Intelligence from the Abwehr whispers of American build-ups, yet the front is quiet. The 99th Infantry Division's foxholes manned by green troops from the States, their M1 Garands untested in real snow. A runner bursts through the door, snowflakes melting on his wool uniform, breath fogging the air. Herr General! Scouts from the 277th Volksgrenadier report contact. Light skirmish with a U.S. patrol near Losheim Gap. They pulled back, but it spooked the lead elements. Von Manteufel's jaw tightens. The gap is the throat of the offensive, a narrow pass where the panzers must funnel like blood through a vein. Delay here, and the element of surprise bleeds out. Get me Dietrich on the line, he orders Weber, who scrambles to the field telephone, its wire snaking out to the encrypted relay truck parked in the yard. Sepp Dietrich, the grizzled SS Oberstgruppenführer commanding the 6th SS Panzer Army to the north, is a bulldog of a man, loyal to Hitler but prone to overconfidence. The line connects with a pop of static. "Hasso, you old fox!" Dietrich's voice booms, laced with Bavarian grit. "My tigers are chomping at the bit. Launch windows now or never. The weather's closing in." Von Manteuffel hesitates, glancing at the clock on the wall. 05:30 hours. The artillery barrage is set for 05:30, 600 guns from the 12th SS Panzer Division to soften the American lines. But the skirmish nags at him. Is it a probe or the first ripple of resistance? He thinks of the Führer's rage if the attack stalls. Rommel's ghost haunts these woods, his own Ardennes failure in 40 a shadow. "Proceed as planned," he finally says, his tone steel. "Full thrust, no deviations." The order ripples out. Outside, the first shells whistle skyward, slamming into the hills with earth-shaking booms that rattle the farmhouse windows. You hear the shouts of crewmen clambering aboard the Sadikfse 251 half-tracks, the clank of tracks on frozen ruts as the column lurches forward. Von der Heydte salutes crisply, grabbing his dispatch case for the jump plane at 07:00. "For the fatherland," he mutters, vanishing into the flurry. But as the panzers roll, a subtle unease settles. Weber's radio chirps again, faint. A garbled Allied chatter intercepted. Ghost army signatures, dummy tanks, and inflatable Shermans fooling Luftwaffe spotters. Von Manteuffel dismisses it as noise, but in the fog-shrouded dawn, the first threads of error weave into the grand design. The gap awaits, and with it the fragile hinge on which the front's fate swings. If you're gripped by this tale of the Ardennes' frozen fury, hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into the war's turning points. Von Manteuffel's staff exhales collectively as the barrage intensifies, the room vibrating with each distant crump. Yet, in the back of his mind, the general wonders if that skirmish was a whisper of something larger, a command's fatal misstep lurking just beyond the snow. The offensive surges, but the clock ticks mercilessly toward revelation. The snow churns under the treads of the lead Panzer IV as it grinds forward through Lossheim Gap, the narrow defile a frozen artery pulsing with the weight of the 5th Panzer Army's advance. It's 06:15 on December 16, 1944, and the Ardennes' morning fog clings like a shroud, muting the roar of engines to a guttural hum that vibrates through your chest. Flurries whip across the column, stinging exposed skin, while the acrid tang of exhaust mixes with the metallic bite of spent shell casings from the ongoing barrage. Up ahead, the 277th Volksgrenadier Division's infantry fans, out in ragged lines, their MG-42 machine guns slung low, boots crunching over ice-glazed ruts that were once Roman roads. Oberst Georg von der Ring, commander of the 277th Lead Battalion, hunkers in the cupola of his command half-track, binoculars pressed to his eyes, scanning the haze-shrouded tree line. At 45, he's a wiry survivor of Stalingrad's ruins, his uniform patched from scavenged wool, a Luger pistol holstered at his hip. The gap is a killer, barely wide enough for two vehicles abreast, flanked by steep, wooded slopes ideal for ambushes. His men, a mix of weary Wehrmacht regulars and fresh conscripts from the Reich's labor battalions, grip their Karabiner 98Ks tightly, faces gaunt under steel helmets crusted with frost. "Keep formation tight," von der Ring shouts over the din, his voice hoarse from the cold. Eyes on the flanks, no stragglers. Behind him, the panzers of the 2nd Panzer Division rumble in echelon, their 75mm KWK-40 guns swiveling warily. Hauptmann Erich Müller, a tank platoon leader with grease-streaked cheeks and a scar from Kursk, peers through his periscope, the world reduced to a slit of grey, his Auswider H model painted in ambiguous three-tone camouflage, and carries a full load of Psegger 39 APC-BC rounds, but fuel gauges flicker low. Rationing means no margin for detours. The skirmish reported earlier replays in his mind. A U.S. patrol from the 14th Cavalry Group, probing with jeeps and light machine guns, vanishing into the woods after a brief firefight. Was it isolated, or the tip of a spear? The column snakes onward. Half-tracks laden with panzer grenadiers bouncing over potholes, their MP-40 submachine guns at the ready. Radios crackle with clipped updates. Panther 1 to command, gap clear to kilometer 3, no contact. But von Manteuffel's unease from the farmhouse lingers like the fog. In the trailing command vehicle, Oberstleutnant Schmidt relays fresh intel from forward observers. Faint tracks in the snow, perhaps American engineers laying mines along the verges. The general, now bouncing in his Opel Blitz staff car a safe kilometer back, grips the armrest, his mind on the bigger picture. Dietrich's SS panzers to the north are committing fully. Their King Tigers, those 70-ton behemoths with 88mm guns that could punch through a T-34 like paper, already reporting gains toward the Elsenborn Ridge. But here, in the center, the gap chokes the flow. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoes from the left slope. A sniper's round, zipping past von der Ring's half-track and splintering bark on a pine. "Ambush!" he bellows, diving low as his gunner swivels the mounted MG-34, tracers arcing into the mist. The column halts in a cacophony of grinding gears and shouted orders, panzers slewing their turrets toward the threat. Müller's tank lurches to a stop, his loader slamming around home while the radio erupts. Enemy infantry estimated platoon strength, browning fire from the high ground. Bursts from M19 machine guns rake the road, pinning the Germans in their vehicles. You can hear the ping of ricochets off armored plates, the screams of a grenadier hit in the open, clutching his side as blood stains the snow crimson. Von der Ring's men dismount in controlled fury, flinging steel hand grenade stick grenades up the embankment, the blasts sending clods of frozen earth raining down. But the Americans, elements of the 106th Infantry Division's 422nd Regiment, dug in with hasty foxholes and 30-caliber rifles, hold their ground, their fire disciplined despite the surprise. These are fresh faces from the States, draftees with buzz cuts and letters from home tucked in their packs, but they've turned the gap into a gauntlet. Müller fires his main gun blindly into the woods, the recoil shuddering the turret like an earthquake, splintering trees and silencing one nest. Yet for every burst suppressed, another opens up, the defenders using the fog to shift positions, their bazookas probing for the panzer's weak spots. Back at the rear, von Manteuffel receives the frantic wire. Heavy resistance in the gap. Advance stalled. Request artillery support. His fist slams the dashboard, the staff car jolting over a rut. The plan demanded swift passage. Any bottleneck here funnels his entire army into a kill zone, exposing flanks to counterattacks from the 99th Division's reserves. Divert the 12th SS batteries, he snaps to Schmidt, who relays the order via field phone. Minutes tick by, precious ones, as the 150mm SFH-18 howitzers reposition, their crews cursing the mud. In the interim, von der Ring commits his pioneers, flamethrower teams advancing with Einstoss Flammenwerfer 46 packs, belching fire into suspected positions, the whoosh and roar turning the slope into an inferno of screams and charred underbrush. The barrage finally falls at 06:45. Shells from the SS guns cratering the hillside, forcing the Americans to break. Müller's platoon pushes through the smouldering pass, the air thick with cordite and the moans of the wounded. Casualties mount. 2 half-tracks brewed up by a well-placed bazooka round, their crews spilling out in flames. But the gap yields, the column surging forward toward the twin villages of Krinkelt and Rocherath. Von der Ring wipes soot from his face, tallying losses. 30 dead, twice wounded, a dent in his understrength battalion. Press on, he urges his radioman, but doubt creeps in. That skirmish wasn't a fluke. The Yanks were waiting, their positions too prepared for mere patrols. As the panzers fan out onto open ground, engines straining up the gentle rise toward Elsenborn, the fog begins to lift, revealing the first glints of dawn on distant spires. Von Manteuffel, monitoring from a hilltop vantage, allows a grim nod. The error hasn't surfaced yet, the decision to commit without clearing the gap fully, but its shadow lengthens. Unbeknownst to him, the delay has rippled. American runners from the 2nd Infantry Division race south, alerting Bastonia's defenders to the storm brewing. Dietrich's northern thrust bogs down in parallel, his Tigers mired in traffic jams from the bottleneck, and in the ether, intercepted signals hint at a deeper miscalculation, a command oversight in coordinating the flanking armies, leaving the center exposed. You feel the tremor of the advance in your bones, the panzer's tracks carving deep scars in the earth, but beneath the triumph, the front's fragile balance teeters. The Meuse beckons 70 miles away, yet every minute lost tightens the noose of Allied response. Von Manteuffel urges full speed, blind to the unraveling thread that could snap the offensive in half. The midday sun struggles to pierce the Ardennes' overcast sky on December 16, 1944, casting a pallid glow over the snow-blanketed fields east of St. Vith, Belgium. The rumble of von Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army echoes through the valleys like the growl of an awakening beast, diesel fumes curling into the chill air alongside the sharp crack of small arms fire. You can taste the grit of churned mud on your tongue, feel the vibration of half-track treads shaking loose pebbles from the roadside as the 2nd Panzer Division's columns stretch for miles. A steel serpent winding toward the vital rail hub that guards the road to the Meuse. Oberst von der Ring's battalion leads the charge now, his command vehicle bouncing over shell-pocked terrain, the earlier skirmish in the gap, a fading scar, but a fresh one forming. Flanking him, the Panzer Grenadiers of the 115th Regiment dismount in skirmish lines, their Sturmgewehr 44 assault rifles. Those cutting-edge STG-44s rushed into production after Normandy's lessons, held at the ready, bayonets fixed for close work. The men are a ragged lot, veterans with haunted eyes from the retreat across France, interspersed with Hitler Youth draftees barely out of their teens, their cheeks flushed not just from cold, but from the adrenaline of the push. Flank the rise, secure that crossroads. Von der Ring bellows into his field radio, his voice cutting through the chatter of idling engines and the distant whomp of American artillery probing the rear. Hauptmann Müller's tank platoon fans out in wedge formation, the lead OSF's H rumbling ahead, its commander scanning the horizon through slitted vision blocks. The landscape opens up here, rolling hills dotted with farmsteads and skeletal hedgerows, but intelligence warns of American defenses consolidating around St. Vith. The 7th Armored Division's Combat Command B has arrived in the night, their M4 Sherman tanks digging in with 76mm guns trained on approach roads, supported by the 106th Infantry's remnants, those golden lions now bloodied and bewildered, their foxholes ringed with barbed wire and trip flares. Von Manteuffel, trailing in his armored staff car with the Corps headquarters, pores over a captured U.S. map, his gloved finger jabbing at the junction. "St. Vith falls today," he mutters to Schmidt, the liaison officer. "It's the linchpin. Without it, the panzers grind to a halt in these damn hills." The advance accelerates, but friction builds like ice on a windshield. At 11:00 hours, forward elements clash with a U.S. outpost near the Auer River Bridge, the 277th Volks Grenadiers storming across in rubber dinghies under covering fire from Nebelwerfer rocket launchers. those screaming, moaning minis that unleash 150mm Werf grenade rockets in fiery salvos, turning the opposite bank into a maelstrom of dirt and screams. American 50 caliber machine guns from half-tracks chatter back, tracers stitching the air like deadly sewing needles, dropping a dozen Germans into the icy water. Müller's gunner spots a Sherman lurking in a copse, its long barrel swinging lazily. The order comes swift. Fire! And the KWK-40 roars. The sabot round shearing through the turret like a hot knife, black smoke billowing as the crew bails out, one man dragging a wounded comrade toward the trees. Victory tastes bitter, though. The bridgehead secures, but reports flood in. The 116th Panzer Division to the south, under Oberst Siegfried von Waldenberg, reports delays from muddy tracks and American bazooka teams ambushing from barns. Von Manteuffel's radio operator, Weber, patches through a call from General der Panzertruppe Heinrich Freiherr von Lüttwitz, his corps commander overseeing the 5th from a forward HQ in Prüm. Hasso, the flanks are hanging. The 7th Army's lagging, their infantry bogged in snowdrifts. Dietrich's SS boys are overextended north. We need to consolidate before pushing St. Vith. Von Manteuffel's brow furrows, the farmhouse tension resurfacing. The Führer's directive was unyielding, no pauses, full momentum to envelop Bastogne by nightfall. But the gap's bottleneck has cost 2 hours already, and now this, coordination fraying like old rope. He weighs it in the jolting staff car, the heater sputtering futile warmth against the invading cold. Divert reserves to shore the south, or double down on the center, committing the 9th SS Panzer's Hummel, self-propelled guns to blast open St. Vith. The error brews here, subtle as a whisper in the wind. Intelligence from a captured GI, interrogated hastily in a roadside ditch, hints at American reinforcements racing west, the 28th Infantry Division reinforcing the line. Their 100mm howitzers already zeroed on the main roads. Yet von Manteuffel, driven by the ghost of 1940's triumphs and Hitler's unyielding faith in the panzers, opts for speed over caution. "Press the attack," he orders Lüttwitz. "No diversions, straight to the objective. The Yanks are cracking." The command ripples forward, igniting a frenzy. Von der Ring's men surge toward the outskirts of St. Vith by 13:00, half-tracks laden with MG-42 nests, chattering suppression fire as pioneers blast through hedgerows with shaped charge satchel charges. Müller's platoon encounters fiercer resistance, a roadblock manned by engineers of the 168th Engineer Combat Battalion, their M1A1 bazookas belching rockets that glance off sloped armor but brew up a trailing Sund KFZ-250, the explosion lighting the grey afternoon like a false dawn. Crewmen tumble out, one with his uniform ablaze, rolling in the snow to extinguish the flames while comrades drag him to cover. The air fills with the stench of burning rubber and cordite, punctuated by the snap of Garand rifles from hidden positions. Inside St. Vith, chaos reigns for the defenders. Brigadier General Alan Jones of the 106th, coordinates from a commandeered schoolhouse, his staff mapping the German thrust on a blackboard smeared with chalk dust. "Hold the rail yards. Buy time for the 7th Armored to dig in," he urges, voice steady amid the incoming Nebelwerfer howls. But the Germans press hard, von der Ring's grenadiers infiltrating the suburbs house to house, potato masher grenades shattering windows and flushing out GIs in desperate bayonet charges. A Panther tank, loaned from the 116th, lumbers into a square, its 75mm shell pulverizing a jeep-mounted 30 cal, but draws fire from a concealed 57mm anti-tank gun, the round punching through the running gear and halting it dead. Crew abandoning under a hail of bullets. By 14:30, the tide seems to turn. Von Manteuffel's panzers encircle the town from the east, cutting the road to Wilsalm, but the delay in the south bites deep. Unseen, the command error crystallizes. By not reinforcing the flank, Lüttwitz's 7th Army stalls against the 28th Division's roadblocks near Bastogne. Their 352nd Volksgrenadier Regiment mired in firefights that sap momentum. American runners slip through the lines, reaching General Middleton's 8th Corps HQ with warnings of the bulge forming. Radios buzz with urgency, Patton's 3rd Army alerted, Montgomery shifting north, but von Manteuffel, focused on the prize, dismisses the flank reports as minor friction. You sense the shift in the wind, the way the snow swirls thicker now, muffling the cheers of advancing Germans as they plant swastika flags on St. Vith's outskirts. Casualties climb, 50 more for von der Ring's battalion, medics hauling litters through the slush, but the hub teeters on falling. Yet in the command car's dim interior, Weber intercepts a garbled Allied transmission. Heavy armor massing east. Request air support at dawn. Von Manteuffel waves it off, urging the final push. The front holds its breath, the error's consequences coiling like a spring, ready to unleash in the hours ahead as darkness falls and the noose tightens unexpectedly. Twilight deepens over the Ardennes on December 16, 1944, as the spires of St. Vith pierce the gathering dusk like jagged teeth against the bruised sky. The air grows thicker with the bite of frost and the acrid haze of cordite, every breath a rasp in your lungs as the 5th Panzer Army's assault hammers the beleaguered town. Shells from the 9th SS Panzer Division's Hummels arc overhead, their 150mm rounds slamming into the rail yards with thunderous cracks that shatter windows and buckle cobblestones. You feel the ground shudder beneath the half-track's tracks, the vibration traveling up your spine like a warning pulse. While the cries of the wounded echo from the rubble-strewn streets, Oberst von der Ring urges his battalion forward from the eastern outskirts, his face smeared with grime under the flickering light of a burning farmhouse. The 277th Volksgrenadiers weave through the shadows, SDE-44s chattering in short bursts to suppress American positions holed up in cellars and behind sandbagged doorways. These GIs from the 106th Infantry Division fight with a desperate tenacity, their M1 Garands barking from upper stories, 30 caliber Brownings sweeping the approaches in deadly fans. Von der Ring ducks as a mortar round, likely an 81mm from the 7th Armoured's batteries, explodes nearby, showering him with splintered wood and dirt. Push the centre, flank the church, cut off their retreat. He roars into his radio, his voice raw over the din. Hauptmann Müller's Panzer IV grinds to a halt at a barricade of overturned trucks and felled trees, the engines growl idling to a tense purr. Inside the turret, sweat beads on his forehead, despite the chill seeping through the hatches. The periscope shows a nightmare of flickering muzzle flashes and darting shadows. His gunner, a lanky Bavarian named Klaus, loads another round with practice snaps, the clang echoing in the confined space. "Target that steeple. It's a spotter nest," Müller orders, and the KWK-40 thunders, the shell ripping through the bell tower in a cascade of stone and dust. But retaliation comes swift. A bazooka rocket streaks from an alley, slamming into the glacis plate with a deafening clang, the impact jolting the crew like a mule kick. Armor holds, but the radio sparks and dies, leaving them isolated in the chaos. Back at the Corps Forward Command Post, a hastily erected tent amid the pines 2 kilometers east, General Major von Manteuffel hunches over the operations map, its plastic overlay creased and marked with grease pencil arrows. Lanterns cast harsh shadows on his lined face, illuminating the iron cross at his throat and the furrow of concentration between his brows. Oberstleutnant Schmidt relays updates from the front, his notepad a blur of scribbles, while Hauptmann Weber wrestles with a jury-rigged Enigma machine, decoding flurries of signals amid jamming static. The room reeks of damp wool, cigarette smoke, and the faint metallic tang of fear sweat. St. Vith's perimeter breached, Herr General. Schmidt reports, but the Yanks are counterattacking from the west. 7th Armoured's Shermans, at least a company, supported by infantry. Von Manteuffel's gloved fist tightens on the table's edge. The town is the keystone. Seize it, and the road to the Meuse opens wide for the panzers to exploit the breach. But the day's delays, the gap's bloody toll, the southern flanks stutter, have eroded the surprise. Luttwitz's 7th Army, meant to pin the Americans south toward Bastogne, reports mounting resistance from the 28th Infantry Division's roadblocks, their advance crawling at 5 kilometers an hour through minefields and ambushes. To the north, Sepp Dietrich's 6th SS Panzer Army fares little better, his King Tigers bogged in traffic snarls around crinkled Rocheraff, their 80mm KWK-43s silent as fuel trucks struggle on iced roads. Von Manteuffel paces the cramped space, boots scuffing the frozen ground, his mind a whirlwind of calculations. Hitler's orders burn in his memory. Relentless drive, no halts, envelop the Allies before they can pivot. A runner bursts through the tent flap, snow cascading from his shoulders, saluting with a gasp. Urgent from the 116th Panzer, Herr General. Oberst von Waldenburg requests immediate air support. American Typhoons strafed their lead elements near the hour, lost 3 Panthers to rockets. Von Manteuffel's jaw sets. The Luftwaffe's contribution is a joke. Mi-109s from JG-3 Squadron grounded by fuel shortages and the Allies' air supremacy, but he knows the skies will clear by dawn, inviting P-47 Thunderbolts to feast on exposed columns. Weber chimes in, his voice tight. Intercepts confirm the 8th Corps alerting Patton, 3rd Army elements shifting north from Lorraine, and Montgomery's Canadians probing our northern shoulder. The general halts, eyes locking on the map's depiction of St. Vith's rail nexus. The command error simmers here in the crucible of decision. Reinforce the faltering south with elements of the 2nd SS Panzer Division's reserves, shoring the flank to protect Bastogne's encirclement, or commit everything to crushing St. Vith now, betting the momentum will carry them through. Doubt flickers. Stalingrad's encirclement taught him the peril of overextension, but the Führer's faith in the panzers, the ghost of 1940's lightning war, tips the scale. No, he declares, voice like grinding gravel. Divert the 9th SS Hummels to the center, full barrage on St. Vith at 18:20, smash their defenses flat. Tell Luttwitz to hold with what he has, the 7th pushes through or perishes. The order transmits in a flurry of radio clicks and motorcycle couriers rippling forward like a shockwave. In St. Vith, the barrage erupts on cue, 105mm and 150mm shells from the Hummels, and SFH-18 howitzers turning the town into a hellscape of fire and ruin. Von der Ring's grenadiers exploit the gaps, storming the rail station in a bayonet charge, their shouts mingling with the screams of defenders as potato mashers explode in close quarters. Müller's tank, radio restored by a hasty patch, rumbles into the fray, crushing a 50 cal position under its tracks, the gunner's bloodied helmet spinning away into the dark. American resistance crumbles in sectors. GIs of the 424th Infantry Regiment falling back through burning streets, their officers barking retreat over the din, but pockets hold. The 7th Armoured's M4A3s countercharging from the west, 76mm guns dueling panzers at point-blank range. By 19:00, St. Vith teeters on the brink, von der Ring's men securing the hospital and town hall, swastikas fluttering from improvised poles amid the wreckage. Casualties are grievous, another 40 for the 277th, medics overwhelmed with frostbitten limbs and shrapnel wounds, but triumph seems at hand. Von Manteuffel allows a rare smile in the tent, clinking a tin mug of ersatz coffee with Schmidt. The hub is ours by midnight, the Meuse tomorrow. Yet the error's shadow deepens unseen. The withheld reserves doom Luttwitz's southern thrust. The 352nd Volksgrenadiers stall short of Bastogne, allowing the 101st Airborne to rush in by truck convoy, their M1 carbines and bazookas fortifying the crossroads. To the north, Dietrich's overextension invites a riposte from the 99th Infantry Division, their artillery zeroing on the congested roads. Weber's Enigma spits a final decode before night fully cloaks the front. American codebreakers at Bletchley have pierced the outer ring of German signals, Patton's divisions accelerating west. Von Manteuffel dismisses it as Allied bluff, urging the final mop-up. You hear the fading echoes of gunfire as darkness swallows the battlefield, the snow falling heavier now, blanketing the dead and the dying alike. St. Vith yields in piecemeal, but the front's fate hinges on minutes yet to come. A misstep in the command chain that will unravel the bulge from within, turning offensive surge to desperate grasp. The panzers refuel in the cold, oblivious as the Ardennes' winter wind whispers of reversal. Night cloaks the Ardennes like a funeral shroud on December 16th, 1944, the temperature plummeting as the 5th Panzer Army's spearhead digs into the captured fringes of St. Vith. The town's skeletal ruins smoulder under a canopy of stars, the acrid reek of smouldering timber and spilled fuel hanging heavy in the frozen air. You can hear the sporadic crackle of small arms fire from holdout pockets, the low moan of wind through shattered church steeples, and the distant rumble of idling Panther engines as crews huddle around barrel fires, rubbing numb hands against the chill. Flakes of snow drift lazily, extinguishing embers and blanketing the fallen in white anonymity. Oberst von der Ring slumps against the wall of a gutted bakery, his greatcoat torn and bloodied from a grazing shrapnel wound to the shoulder. His battalion, the 277th Volksgrenadiers, has clawed the eastern half of St. Vith from the Americans after hours of brutal street fighting, but the cost is etched in every weary face around him. Medics ferry litters through the debris, their satchels empty of morphine, while pioneers rig explosives to clear a blocked rail spur clogged with derailed boxcars. Secure the perimeter. Post sentries on the Vielsalm road. Von der Ring orders a cluster of grenadiers, their STG-44s slung low, eyes hollow from the day's grind. One youth, no older than 18, nods mechanically, his helmet askew, a fresh scar weeping blood down his cheek from a bayonet scrape. Hauptmann Müller's Panzer IV squats in a side street like a wounded beast, its turret scarred by bazooka strikes, one track link bent from a ricochet. Inside, the crew brews coffee over a jury-rigged stove, the steam fogging the vision ports as Klaus the gunner recounts the duel with a Sherman. She brewed up like a firecracker, but their loader nailed our radio mast. Müller stares out into the dark, the periscope's green glow reflecting in his eyes. Fuel siphoned from a captured U.S. truck keeps them mobile, but ammunition runs low. Only a dozen rounds left for the KWK-40, scavenged PZGR-39s mixed with unreliable captured 50 cal rounds. The victory feels hollow. The 7th Armoured's remnants have slipped west under cover of darkness, their taillights vanishing into the hills, leaving behind booby-trapped vehicles that claim 2 more pioneers in a fiery trap. 2 kilometers east, in the command tent now reinforced with sandbags against probing artillery, General Major von Manteuffel pores over the latest situation report by the light of a hissing pressure lantern. The air inside is thick with pipe smoke and the tang of wet canvas. Maps pinned to a collapsible table showing the offensive's jagged progress. Oberstleutnant Schmidt traces the lines with a stubby pencil, his uniform rumpled from the day's jolts. St. Vith's rail hub is ours by 22:00, Herr General, he says, voice edged with fatigue. Von der Ring's boys hold the center. The 9th SS Hummels silence the last strong points. Casualties. Heavy, but the road west opens. Hauptmann Weber, hunched over the Enigma's whirring rotors, nods grimly, decoding a fresh batch of signals amid bursts of static. The machine's keys clack like impatient fingers, spitting out plain text on a narrow strip, confirmations from the 116th Panzer securing the southern approaches, but warnings from Luttwitz's 7th Army growing dire. Von Manteuffel straightens, his iron cross catching the light as he adjusts his scarf against the draft, seeping through the flap. At 52, the weight of command presses like the snow outside, his mind replaying the day's decisions. The push through the gap, the barrage on St. Vith, the refusal to divert reserves south. Hitler's vision burns clear. Split the Allies at the Meuse, seize Antwerp's ports, reverse the Reich's tide. Yet doubt gnaws, sharper now in the quiet hours. A field telephone jangles, its bell cutting the murmurs like a gunshot. Schmidt snatches it up, listens, then pales. From Corps HQ, Herr General, Oberst von Woldenberg reports the southern flank buckling, the 352nd Volksgrenadiers, pinned by the 28th Infantry near Bastogne. American paratroopers, 101st Airborne, arriving in force. They've retaken the Neufchâteau road, no encirclement possible without immediate support. The tent falls silent, save for the lantern's hiss and the distant pop of a flare illuminating the tree line. Von Manteuffel snatches the receiver, his voice a low growl. "Luttwitz, what in God's name? Your orders were to fix the Yanks south." The Corps commander's reply crackles through, laced with urgency. "The delays from the gap cost us, Hasso. Minefields, ambushes, my infantry's bled dry. Patton's Third Army is mobilizing. Scouts report tank columns from the Saar. We need the 2nd SS reserves now, or Bastogne slips the noose." Von Manteuffel's free hand clenches, knuckles whitening. The error crystallizes in that instant. The choice to hammer St. Vith at the expense of the flank, betting on momentum that now falters like a stalled engine. Minutes earlier, he'd green-lit the mop-up, assuming the 7th would hold. Now, reports flood in of US engineers bridging the hour under moonlight, reinforcements pouring east. He paces the confined space, boots crunching frost on the dirt floor, weighing the pivot. Divert the 2nd SS Panzer Division's Tigers south? It would stall the center, expose St. Vith to counterattack from the 106th's rallying elements, or reinforce north, bolstering Dietrich's stalled thrust against Elsenborn Ridge, where the 99th Division's artillery, 105mm M2A1 howitzers, rains counter-battery fire on congested columns. Weber interrupts, thrusting a decoded intercept forward. Allied chatter, Herr General, 8th Corps confirming the bulge. Montgomery's 30th Corps shifting south, airfields at Eindhoven prepping P-51 Mustangs for dawn strikes. The general's face hardens, the farmhouse's optimism a distant memory. The command chain's misstep, overcommitment to the hub without securing the pincers, has bought the Americans hours, enough for Bastogne's garrison to fortify, for radios to summon the storm. "Commit the reserves south," von Manteuffel finally orders, the words tasting like ash. "Alert the 2nd SS, full march to Bastogne at first light. Tell Dietrich to hold Krinkelt with what he has." The directive races out via motorcycle dispatch riders, their engines coughing to life in the snow, headlamps cutting brief swaths through the night. In St. Vith, von der Ring receives the shift, his radio man relaying the urgency amid the wind's howl. Müller's crew, sensing the change, tops off fuel from jerry cans, the diesels glug, echoing their unease. The panzers reposition under cover of darkness, King Tigers of the SS rumbling south from reserve positions, their 70-ton hulks straining icy slopes, 88mm guns traversing warily. But the minutes lost compound, like interest on a debt. By 23, year 0, American runners reach General Anthony McAuliffe's 101st in Bastogne, the screaming eagles digging in with hasty perimeters. There, 50 cal M2 Browning zeroed on approach roads. To the north, a sudden U.S. counterthrust from the 2nd Infantry Division hits Dietrich's exposed flank near Rocherath. 57mm anti-tank guns brewing up 2 Tigers in a blaze of phosphorus. Von Manteuffel stares at the map, the arrows now curving inward like a closing trap. Weber's radio chirps again. Faint Allied voices. Bulge confirmed. Patton en route. The general slumps into a camp stool, the weight of the front pressing down. St. Vith's fall, hard won, buys a foothold, but the era's ripple has alerted the giant, turning surprise to siege. You feel the night's chill seep deeper, the snow muffling the first probes of Allied scouts as the Ardennes holds its breath. The panzers grind south, but dawn looms with thunderbolts. The command's fatal hesitation, unraveling the offensive thread by thread, minutes turning tides in the frozen dark. Dawn breaks pale and unforgiving over the Ardennes on December 17th, 1944, the first rays slicing through the pines like accusatory fingers, illuminating the twisted wreckage of St. Vith's streets. The air bites with a ferocity that numbs exposed skin, carrying the mingled scents of charred wood, oily smoke, and the underlying rot of unburied dead. You can hear the low groan of wounded men calling for medics in the ruins, the clatter of shovels as engineers clear debris from the rail yard, and the distant cough of Panther engines firing up in the cold. Snow crunches underfoot as patrols fan out, their boots leaving bloody prints amid the frost. Oberst von der Ring stirs from a fitful doze in the commandeered bakery, his shoulder bandaged crudely with field dressing, the pain a dull throb pulsing in time with his heartbeat. His 277th Volksgrenadiers hold the town in a tenuous grip, foxholes scraped in rubble piles, MG-42s covering the western exits where the 7th Armoured's ghosts might return. The men huddle around sputtering braziers, sharing rations of hard bread and ersatz tea, their faces gaunt masks of exhaustion. A young conscript, fingers blackened by frostbite, clutches his carabiner 98K like a talisman, whispering prayers against the dawn's chill. "The Yanks pulled back last night," von der Ring mutters to his adjutant, rubbing stubble-shadowed jaws. "But they'll hit hard today, mark my words." "Sieben, scouts report American movements west, toward the Salm River, but the victory feels Pyrrhic. The rail hub's tracks are twisted, useless for the supply trains von Manteuffel desperately needs. Hauptmann Müller's Panzer IV crew emerges from their steel cocoon, breath fogging in the turret as they check the KWK-40's breech, loading the last of their scavenged rounds. The tank's hull bears the scars of the night, dents from bazooka strikes, a radio antenna snapped like a twig, but it rolls, tracks grinding over cobblestones slick with ice. Müller scans the horizon through binoculars, spotting the first glints of Allied aircraft contrails high above, P-47 Thunderbolts circling like vultures. "Mount up," he orders, voice gravelly from lack of sleep. The reserves are shifting south. Bastonia's the key now. His men nod wearily, the elation of St. Vith's fall soured by rumours of the southern stall. The 116th Panzer's liaison arrived at midnight, face ashen, warning of paratrooper roadblocks, turning the advance into a slog. 3 kilometres east, von Manteuffel's command tent buzzes with frantic activity. The lanterns glow, yielding to the weak sunlight filtering through canvas slits. Maps litter the table, overlaid with fresh red lines marking the night's reversals, while the Enigma machine hums incessantly under Weber's watchful eyes. The signals officer, bags deepening under his sockets, decodes intercepts with trembling hands. Allied code names like Ghost Army and Bazooka Charlie pepper the traffic, hinting at inflatable decoys fooling spotters and Piper Cubs spotting for artillery. Oberstleutnant Schmidt briefs the general, his voice clipped amid the jangle of field phones. "Herr General Major, the 2nd SS Panzer is en route south, King Tigers leading, but the roads are choked. Lutwitz reports the 352nd Volksgrenadiers down to half strength, Bastogne ringed but not tight. The 101st Airbornes dug in like ticks, McAuliffe's boys with every anti-tank gun they can muster. Von Manteuffel stands rigid, greatcoat buttoned against the invading draft, his eyes bloodshot from poring over reports till the small hours. The Iron Cross at his collar feels heavier now, a reminder of glories past amid this frozen quagmire. Hitler's Ardennes gamble, Wacht am Rhein, hinged on speed, on punching through before the Allies could react, but the command's fatal pause has unravelled it. That decision at dusk, to prioritize St. Vith over the flanks, bought minutes of false security. Now those minutes multiply into hours of exposure. To the south, the 7th Army's thrust falters against Bastogne's defenders, their 57mm M1 guns and bazookas claiming half-tracks in ambushes, while Patton's 3rd Army, 4 divisions strong, with M4A3 E8 Easy 8s mounting 76mm wet storage guns, surges north from Luxembourg. Their engines are thunder the Germans can almost hear. Northward, Dietrich's 6th SS Panzer Army reels from a dawn counterattack by the 2nd Infantry Division, 100mm howitzers from the 99th pounding the congested columns near Elsenborn, brewing up fuel trucks in cascades of flame that light the snow like hellfire. A runner skids into the tent, saluting with snow-dusted gloves. "Air raid imminent! Typhoons inbound!" Von Manteuffel snaps orders. Disperse the panzers, camouflage nets. But it's too late. The sky erupts with the scream of diving Hawker Typhoons from the RAF's 2nd Tactical Air Force, their 20mm Hispano cannons stitching the ground as rockets streak toward the rail yard. Explosions rock the command post, a half-track nearby erupting in a fireball that singes the tent flap. Weber dives for cover, the Enigma toppling with a clatter, while Schmidt shields the maps. Outside, Müller's tank crew scatters as strafing runs rake the streets, bullets pinging off armor like hail on tin. A direct hit claims a San KKFZ 251, the half-track's crew spilling out in flames. Their screams cut short by the snow. Von Manteuffel emerges coughing into the chaos, directing fire teams with a captured Thompson submachine gun at his side. The raid lasts minutes, eternal ones, but inflicts havoc. 5 vehicles destroyed, a dozen wounded, supplies scattered. As the Typhoons bank away, trailing smoke from flak, the general confronts the unraveling. Radio traffic from Lutwitz crackles urgently. Bastogne holds 101st repelling probes. Reserves arrive too late. Yanks bridging the river. The error's full weight crashes down. The refusal to balance the pincers, overcommitting the center, has exposed the bulge's soft underbelly. American intelligence, pierced by ultra-decrypts at Bletchley Park, has mapped the offensive's axis. Montgomery pivots his 30th Corps south, while Eisenhower commits air assets unsparingly. St. Vith's capture, meant to unlock the west, now anchors a salient vulnerable to counter-encirclement, the panzers fuel-starved and flanked. By midday, von der Ring's men repel a probing attack from the 7th Armored's remnants. Sherman's dueling Panthers at 500 meters, 76mm rounds glancing off sloped armor, but claiming one OSF-G in a side shot that ignites the engine. Casualties mount, another 20 grenadiers down, medics rationing sulfur powder amid the moans. Müller maneuvers his platoon to cover the retreat of a faltering company, the KWK-40 barking until barrels glow, but ammo runs dry, forcing a fallback. Von Manteuffel, in his battered Opel Blitz, relays the grim assessment to OKW. Advance blunted, flanks compromised, request Luftwaffe interdiction. The reply is silence, Berlin's illusions shattering. You sense the shift in the Ardennes' frozen heart, the wind carrying the first echoes of Allied artillery marching east as the bulge begins to sag. Von Manteuffel's command error, those critical minutes of misprioritization, has transformed Hitler's counter-offensive from thunderbolt to trap, sealing the front's fate in the snows of 44. The panzers grind on defiant, but the tide turns inexorably, sacrifices etching the path to inevitable reversal.